Good morning. My name is Metzger, and today I am happy to welcome you to Smart Justice Works, our own very podcast discussing everything misdemeanor offenses here in state court in Cobb County. I have with me today a very special guest, Mr. Mike Lutzenkirchen. I hope I said that right.
Very well.
Well, I have been groomed a little bit by my PR person, so she did a good job. I will give her a pat on the back.
Great.
I want to thank you for being here today. I know it's around the holidays. We have the Arctic weather outside, and it's very cold, and you are here bright and early, ready to bring some very important and impactful information to Cobb County residents. So thank you.
Well, it's an honor to be here, and being a Chicagoan, born and raised, but living down in the South, the Arctic chill feels good, and I know it's going to go away. So
20 degrees is nothing for you.
Not at all.
Okay. Well, it is cold outside. That's all I can say. And I hope it snows this Christmas. But speaking about holidays, we wanted to bring you this segment specifically because it's just a time where people are having so much fun. There's a lot of gaiety and fun, and there's also a lot of alcohol and drinking. And I think it's really important to talk about why we want our drivers this holiday season to be safe. Look, I am not trying to make more business. I'm actually trying to deter cases from coming to my office because we don't get paid by the hour. And the less cases we have, the better for Cobb County. That brings me to, you have this great foundation that I've heard a lot of good things about. Lutzie 43, I believe.
Right. That's right.
Can you tell me a little bit about that foundation?
Sure. Yeah. The quick backstory is we've lived here since August of 97, moving down from Carmel, Indiana, originally from Chicago. Known my wife since I'm 8 years old. Just celebrated our 40th anniversary. We got 4 beautiful children. All went to Lasser High School. The third of our 4 kids is Philip. Philip was a student athlete at Lasser, went on to play football at Auburn University from 2009 to 12. As a sophomore, they won a national championship.
I understand he was also in the Southeastern Conference.
All Southeast Conference academic performer, 3 out of 4 years. The reason he wasn't the 4th because he graduated 3.5 years, but played a key role in that 2010 national championship team and went on to be a 2-time captain. His goal going down to Auburn was to get a degree and hopefully play in the NFL. Had a couple significant injuries. His senior year, he only got to play 6 games. And then he moved to Montgomery, Alabama to start his adult life. And unfortunately, the weekend of June 27th of 2014, Philip gathered with some friends at a rural farm in LaGrange, Georgia. And through a series of drinking throughout the day and all that, he found himself at 2:30 in the morning, getting in the back of a 2006 Chevy Tahoe, driver, front passenger, young lady back in the back seat with Philip. They were all drunk. They went out to get a can of dip because the driver was out of a can of dip, we learned. He did get that can of dip, got back on that rural roadway. I think your audience knows pretty much, you don't have to go too far to Marietta being somewhere like that. There's no street lights. There's no stop lights. At this particular location, a single stop sign. It was a T intersection. The driver had an option to go left or right. He missed the stop sign. When you look back on the investigation, the black box and everything else, the driver was going 77 miles in a 45. Caused this vehicle to flip. The report said it went through 450 feet through the air. And like we've done with our foundation now in its 11th year, we've told kids and adults and corporate employers trying to protect their drivers. The one young man that did a 3-second have in his life where he reached to his right shoulder and went down his left hip in that front passenger seat, he survived that crash. He crawled out of the vehicle that was upside down, ran for help, came back, tripped over the young lady that got ejected from the back seat, thought she was dead, was read her last rites. By miracle, she survived it. The driver he found hanging through the driver's side door, suspended in the air. He was dead. In this accident report, there's a drawing, reenactment. It's DOA, dead on arrival, and the young man's name. And this friend never found Philip. Philip was found when first responders got there and were able to put bright lights on. Philip was thrown 15 feet from the vehicle, also dead on arrival. So Philip had a large platform at Auburn University, loved to play football, Fan base couldn't, I guess, say Lutzenkirchen, so they nicknamed him Lutzie. He wore 43. Phil was known for doing a lot of things off the field for young kids that were born with challenges like spina bifida or autism spectrum or developed cancer. So we knew he did some special things, and football gave him this platform. We started the Lutzie 43 Foundation, and here we are 11 years later speaking with you to do all we can to reduce the number of roadway fatalities that are taking place.
It sounds like a split-second decision led to something you can never alter or change in your life or Philip's young life. And I'm really sorry for that loss. And I know you've probably heard that so many times.
We have.
It just doesn't really resonate in terms of impact. But what you do with Lutzie 43 does.
Well, we started the conversation talking about the upcoming holidays, and we should be celebrating, and hopefully people celebrate Christmas for the right reason. But to kind of set this up maybe with your audience is Thanksgiving holiday is also one of our most dangerous on our roadways. And in Georgia, like every other state, they start to track roadway fatalities from 6 p.m. Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, through midnight. In our great state of Georgia, this past Thanksgiving that just finished, we lost 11 lives on our roadways. Mm-hmm. And statistically, that's down from 17 in 2024, and it's down from 23 in 2023. And I get people that say, based on what we're doing, he goes, Mike, that's great. That's awesome, right? I said, hold on a minute. It's trending in the right direction. But what I focus on, we still lost 11 lives. And these, by the roadway safety experts, weren't due to accidents. They were crashes due to poor choices or behavioral choices. And that's what we're trying to address.
Right. Well, I want to talk a little bit just about Philip. It sounds like, he was probably a good Catholic kid and making all the right decisions until, that happened. Tell me a little bit about a memory of Philip that today just kind of makes you smile.
Yeah, again, he was my only boy. I've got 3 beautiful daughters. He was a mama's boy. I mean, he would melt around his mother, but got to be at Lassiter High School his freshman year and was really enjoying football and basketball. I'd already given up baseball, and I guess it got to be his sophomore year. We had a pretty good varsity football season. He says, Dad, I'm going to go play football at the highest levels. So at that point is when he kind of determined that I'm going to play football. But he chose Auburn University because he said, Dad, it's one of the only schools I've visited that if for some reason I can't play football, it's where I could see myself being a student.
They're so nice at Auburn. We visited too. I also have 2 sons. So it was one of the warmest, nicest campuses. I can see why anyone would want to go there.
It's, the friendliest village, right? It's changing a lot because it's grown so big, but I'm blessed to what we do to go on so many different college campuses, and they all have special, unique celebrations or things that they, move forward with. I've got a daughter graduated from UGA, so I do say go Dogs.
I mean, I say go Dogs all the time.
Sure.
I'm a Georgia graduate, so,
But like we were talking before this, right? You've also got a son at Georgia Tech. So you got to love Georgia Tech.
I do love Georgia Tech. I love all our Georgia schools. So, yes, I have a son at Georgia Tech, which means that those UGA Tech games, I just have to not say anything,
The divided household, right? Right. But
right.
My oldest daughter graduated from Georgia. Next daughter played college soccer at Winthrop University up in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Phil went to Auburn. And our youngest daughter, I always joke with people, every family's got a little bit of a hellion in their family. Our youngest daughter, Abby, went and chose to play soccer at the University of Alabama, even though her brother was at Auburn. So
right. That rival.
Yeah, just been blessed with 4 great kids. I give credit to my wife. And, going back, Philip, there's so many different unique things about Philip, but he just had this canny ability to walk in a room and make you feel like you were the most important person. But, going back to that weekend, it was that one moment of the decision to get in a vehicle after drinking all day that, quite frankly, took his life.
And, coming from, I was raised Catholic too, drinking has not had... We've seen our parents drink. It's not socially acceptable. It's the one thing that I think most people don't think about is this decision could be life-altering because most of us grew up in households where alcohol was not considered sinful or bad. It was normal. So in that regard, do you think this catastrophe changed your view on alcohol consumption?
I again, being raised Catholic, wine and so forth, I'd be lying to your audience. I said I don't drink. I do drink, but I've also been raised that you drink under moderation. You drink in control. And very early on when we started this foundation, I said this is going to be viewed as a harsh comment, but alcohol did not kill Philip. It was his decision-making that weekend, where alcohol certainly contributed to the ability to make decisions, but it was decision-making that weekend that took his life. And we're blessed. We just delivered, as I shared with you off air, we just delivered our 33rd 5-hour safe driving summit.
Gotcha.
Our target audience for that element of what we're doing, or aspect of the foundation, is teenagers. But I said that weekend, Philip lacked discipline to make right decisions. And when we started our foundation, it was love like Lutz, lead like Lutz, and love like Lutz, live like Lutz, and learn from Lutz, or lead like Lutz. And I'm getting confused now, but
that's okay.
When the reports came out 6 weeks after Philip passed away, we didn't get the courtesy of a phone call from law enforcement or from the media. It was a Google alert. It was the lead story on USA Today Sports. It was on SportsCenter that night that Auburn's Lutzenkirchen's BAC, blood alcohol content level, wasn't 0.04 or 0.08, which is legally intoxicated. It was 0.377, an astronomical number. And I share that because we went in a black hole for another 48 hours after that to say, how can we do this foundation? How can I go speak to kids about Philip's leadership? So we went from love like Lutz, live like Lutz, lead like Lutz, to love like Lutz, live like Lutz, and learn from Lutz. And that's what we're trying to do with this foundation.
Do you think, and this is from the perspective of a parent, do you think that having a foundation to honor him or to teach others to maybe not make those same choices, because we know we all have good kids and our kids make mistakes, right? This is not necessarily about that, but do you think this foundation helps you somewhat reconcile with your grief? Because grief is a very, it's different for everyone and people heal differently. Do you think that this foundation helps you grieve him, but also heal you?
I'm sure there's a combination of that, right? And I've said early on through this thing, and again, it's hard to believe we're in our 11th year. So many people said, when you start this foundation out, Mike, if you get to 18 months, watch out, because the survival mode of a foundation founded on the loss of a life, it just withers away. And I'm proud to say we're here 11 years later, but I also used to say there is no book on grief. But then again, there's too many books on grief. I've received so many books from people I know, people I didn't know. But everybody grieves their own way. I don't criticize how people grieve, but I'm sure every time I go and speak, people always say to me, I don't know how you do this. Other fathers say, I don't think I could do that. And I said, well, don't cut yourself short, because based on your faith, this is why I do this. My faith. I'm trying to honor Philip. I'm also trying to earn my way to be back with him someday. And I know where he's at. He's in heaven. But there's a lot of work to be done. So, but I'm sure, there's the old saying that time heals things. Nothing brings my son back. But I'm sure each and every time I go and speak or do something, an interview like this, there's a little bit of probably grief reconciliation, comfort to know that we're doing something in Philip's honor that's making a difference.
Right. You're moving the needle in a way that he would have been proud of you.
I believe so.
I do think that. I think when you suffer such loss, you have to find a way to deal with it. And this is a great way to deal with it, because hopefully if anyone's listening today and they have young children, this is something they can learn. Hopefully something from having those serious conversations about who you get in the car with, how much alcohol you should be consuming, safe driving, distracted driving, and the little things that as parents sometimes we forget to talk about. I mean, I know I've been guilty of that, just forgetting they're going to a party. Hey, make sure you're making good choices tonight, right? Sometimes it's the little things we forget. And they're young. They're very young. So the guidance doesn't stop. I have an 18-year-old, and I find myself, he's a boy, I find myself constantly worried because when he's away at college, I don't know what's going
Sure.
on. I know that they try things. It is also the time for kids to, we say, experiment a little bit, but you don't want them doing it to the point where it hurts them. So it's a balance, really, as a parent, not being too preachy.
Well,
But,
I think in college, right? College it's a lot of classroom book study, right? But there's a lot of lessons in life that you learn in college outside of a classroom. I mean, who you choose as your friends, what you
yeah.
do, the peer pressure that's there to go along with everybody. There's things right now in college that I didn't have to worry about. I didn't worry about drugs. I didn't do drugs. I didn't worry about these cell phones that they're constantly a part of us. But there's a lot to learn in college outside of
Right.
the classroom.
Social skills, not gaming all day. I think that's the struggle I have with a very tech savvy kid,
Sure.
which makes them pretty antisocial. That's a whole different type of problem, withdrawing from the world. I probably shouldn't be talking about him. He's not gonna like that. But
He'll
there are
remind
other
you. He'll remind you that you
he'll
talked about him.
remind me that I embarrassed him on air. But there are a plethora of issues that you see and things that we didn't have to. We used to go outside and hang out and go to the mall and just go shopping for fun or whatever, go to the movies. But they don't do that these days. That's not how kids socialize. They are gaming all day with this screen, and I really don't think it's healthy, but it's a different world. It really is.
Well, you and I were talking off air a little bit, right? Sometimes unintended consequences occur. We're already working with some high schools in Georgia where the principals are getting ahead of the game because next year they're going to have to enforce those kids not having their cell phones during the class day, right?
Hmm?
So you think about a high school that might walk into high school at 7:30 in the morning and might not get their phone back until 3 o'clock. One of the unintended consequences we're talking about is the kids that don't have extracurricular activities at the high school are getting in their car, driving off campus. First thing they're doing is right there, checking on what did they miss out throughout the entire day. So I think we're going to have to keep our eyes on that unintended consequence of what might be beneficial in the classroom and getting them away from the phones and the tech world, but they're going to catch up to it right away as they're getting behind the motor of a vehicle. That's concerning to me in that our foundation will look to how do we incorporate into what we're doing when we get in front of teenage audiences.
The new challenges that they face. How successful have you been getting in front of those teenage audiences here in Cobb County?
Yeah, first of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't share. We were blessed back in mid-March of 22 to sign a multi-year agreement with the Georgia Department of Transportation, Commissioner Russell McMurray. And their intrigue with us was 43 key seconds that we've created, but more importantly, a 5-hour safe driving summit. So I'm proud to say through that relationship, we've now delivered 31 high school summits across the state of Georgia. They're 5-hour events.
Excellent.
They run from 9 to 2. The success of them is we're able to recruit city, county, and statewide personnel in law enforcement, all the first responder organizations, healthcare. I'll tell you about the summits breakouts in just a minute, but then also trucking and transportation. And we believe, not in scared straight with these teenage audiences, we believe let's put subject matter experts in front of them where they can share their expertise, their background, their education, but more importantly, their world experiences, all in an effort to get kids to make better decisions when they get that privilege of driving that vehicle, right? It's not a right. If it was a right, we wouldn't need to get driver's license. And what I remind every teenage audience is if you look down on your driver's license, your signature's on that. So here in Georgia, you made a commitment by signing that you're going to follow the rules of the road that are under, Governor Kemp's jurisdiction, whether it's at the city here in Marietta, Cobb County, or at the state level. But we believe these summits are making a difference. And I'm asked a question all the time for firms that want to invest in what we're doing, like, how do I know there's an ROI, or return on investment? And my answer is not meant to be smart alecky, but it's to say, how do you measure something that doesn't happen?
Well, that's what I say about prosecuting cases like DUIs. When we prosecute a case and we deter that individual from reoffending, hopefully that's what happens after a prosecution when you take responsibility. We don't get an award or some kind of something telling us, oh, now you have won, this good citizen award or whatever. It's not like that.
Right.
There is no way of tangibly being able to count your wins. I guess you can tangibly count it with DUIs not on the uptick, but I think with the holidays, we really don't know where it's gonna lead after, I'd say, New Year's Eve.
Yeah, that's right. So
So
I go back to the Halloween statistics. 11 lost lives versus 17 last year versus 23 the year before. I can't prove this, but I've got to believe of what we're doing to invest in the state of Georgia through all these wonderful relationships we have, that Philip's story, the creation of 43 key seconds, the checklist of clear head, clear hands, clear eyes, and then click it tied to the key as the image, that we're contributing to that reduction. I've got friends in law enforcement and in healthcare that will tell us, Mike, there's no doubt with what we're doing with these summits, we're making an impact at the high school level. What we're doing in corporate America to get them to see that if you've got a fleet-based organization, they're doing a great job of making sure the drivers of their company logoed vehicles are following the protocols that have been set for safe driving, but they're not giving that same enthusiasm to all the other employees that drive their own vehicle to and from work. They're not packaging it for employees to take it home to their driving age family members, which gets you into the community. We just believe with what we're doing with 43 key seconds, it's having a tangible effect on reducing roadway.
I mean, I do think education is key, and I think we should never underestimate our young drivers. They're smart. When you give them fact-based, rational, logical explanations, they're going to listen. And I know when I was at that age, if you had shown me a picture of a fatality, it probably would have stayed with me. Not because I would have liked it, but because I would have remembered every time I went out with my friends and they were doing something, but maybe that's not the kind of night I wanted to have. So there is something to be said for imagery and having fact-based education, because you might forget the numbers, and I'm going to throw a number at you, and just the statistics from 2023 shows over 12,000 deaths here in Georgia, fatality DUI based crashes. So if you're thinking about it in that way, we don't even have that many people die in wars anymore. We're losing more people on our roadways than we are in any current war. And not that we want people dying in wars, but that should just give you an idea of just how serious this issue is. I think it's not one where we should be like, oh, these things happen. It's preventive. We can all prevent it. Parents, teachers, administrators, prosecutors, law enforcement. It's for all of us, actually.
And I'll give you a great example of an organization or a title of somebody that can be preventative. I was blessed to give a talk recently in Tennessee to the Tennessee chapter of the American Trauma Surgeons. And two different surgeons came up to me after that talk and said, you know what, Mike, you've kind of lit a flame in me that my job is basically reactionary. I'm a trauma room surgeon, so I'm in that emergency room and we're waiting on emergencies to come in. What they see most common are crash-related injuries or elderly falling. The last thing they want to see is a teen coming in from a crash, and unfortunately that happens all too much. But because of these summits that we're delivering, one of the breakouts is a reenactment of a teen that's been in a crash, and they come into a makeshift emergency room where we have anywhere from 6 to 10 professional emergency room personnel led by a lead surgeon, a backup surgeon, airway, vitals, nurses and so forth that are looking at vitals and so forth. But we give that team a reason to be proactive, to go and educate these teens through these summits about, here's what happens if you end up in a crash and you end up in our trauma room. It's not a scared straight. They're just going to show them, here are the 10 instruments we're going to use to try to get you through the emergency room to a surgery or to multiple surgeries to get you to rehab. And can the rehab experts then get you to the point where you were pre-crash, both mental and physical status? That's something we're doing, working with all these different collaborative organizations.
And that is it's really good, because I feel like, when you get people thinking about the minutiae and detail and how it's going to affect them, it becomes real. It's not just imaginary. It's not, I just had too many that one night. I won't do it again. I mean, how do you feel about that, really, when someone says, well, it was just a mistake?
Mistake took my son's life. I mean, again, you and I talked off camera about the term overserved. I mean, nobody can overserve me. I make my own decisions, right? If I've had too much to drink, it's a bad choice I made. But to say he or she was overserved, I just don't like that concept. I think we got to have individual responsibility more. And I'd be lying if I said I haven't had too much to drink. I have, but I've been surrounded by people that don't allow me to put myself in a bad position. You try not to do that, especially since we lost Philip.
And I feel like the conversation is not that, hey, we're not asking people to stop drinking. This is not prohibition times.
Right.
What we're asking people to do is to be thoughtful, take responsibility for themselves, and make a decision before they even go out to have a plan. If you're going to drink, maybe don't drive. Get an Uber.
Sure.
I've been prosecuting DUIs. I started out my career 20 years ago doing this. The laws changed a lot since that time. We used to prosecute DUIs without videos. We could have an officer who could relate the facts of the case and tell you the condition the driver was in, and the jury would believe them. So you had credibility because no one thought, wait, hey, an officer's just going to spend all night doing this just to come get you. It was considered a public safety service. And things have changed. And those cases are so much harder to prove now because people want DNA, blood tests, and every type of scientific evidence on a DUI case, a DUI driving under the influence of alcohol and or drugs. Now, I agree we should have a blood test in every single case because most people aren't just drinking alcohol. They are on antidepressants. They are on, whatever medication they normally take and mixing it, and we're not even going to add marijuana. Whenever you add, the way I look at it, if you're medicated on prescription pills, you add a little bit of alcohol, that could pretty much be catastrophic on the roadway. Because not only the rule is if you are a less safe driver, you should not be driving. That means you are going to be guilty of a DUI. So without a test, just the driving manifestations, unable to stay in your lane of travel, speeding can be an indication of impairment. The time of night, obviously, if you're leaving a bar at 3 a.m, that is not a good time. Running a stop sign or a red light, all those things are indications that you should not be on the roadway. So, but the laws changed, and jurors tend to be a little hesitant because they think we all do it. Give the guy a break. I'm not sure what your experience was like I guess you didn't have any litigation or anything like that. It was just,
No, again, for whatever God's plan is for what we're doing with this foundation, kind of the detail was, quite frankly, Philip went to this farm. They drank throughout the day. I've been asked so many times over the last 11 years, am I mad at my son? And I'm not mad at my son. I'm disappointed because he always showed leadership. And I'm disappointed that he didn't get to that farm that day with 12 other kids. I don't know how many vehicles they arrived in. The regret I have is that Philip didn't say to those kids, give me your keys. Do not follow me. You'll get your keys back 5 o'clock tomorrow, which was Sunday at 5. Had he done that, you and I wouldn't even know each other. We wouldn't have a foundation.
Right.
My son would be with me, but that's not the plan for this. The reality of it, we were at Catholic Mass here at Transfiguration here in Marietta that morning. It was my wife and 2 of my daughters. My youngest daughter, Abby, who was actually getting ready for her sophomore year at Alabama where she played soccer, she had a surgery already. And they allowed her to play back in those days one preseason semi-pro soccer game as part of her rehab. So she was in Jacksonville, Florida that morning. And we literally pulled into our driveway around 10:30 that Sunday morning after Mass. And Mary had noticed on our front door that there was something on that front door. So I pulled up short, let Mary get out. She went to the front door, and I immediately turned around to Amy and Ann and said, where was Philip last night? And they gave me an odd response. They said, Dad, we don't know. And they immediately started getting on their phones My kids are so tight. This is one of the benefits of technology, I guess, in these phones. You can't stay on top of one another. And when they said, I don't know, that combined with something on our front door, I knew this wasn't good. Parked in the garage, made herself in the house, made her way into the house, and Mary gave me a Post-it note. And every audience, whether it's grade school to middle school to high school to adults, know what a Post-it note is. In our topic, I'm trying to alleviate some of the stress of the significance of the discussion. I'll say Post-it notes are meant for guys like me that can't remember grandchildren's Social Security numbers or passwords to things. But the reality of it, this Post-it note simply had, please call a number, and it was a 706 area code. Mm. And we made our way out to the deck that Sunday morning, sunny like today, but already about 85 degrees. And I dialed that number, and Mary was here. Amy and Ann were here. And I got a voice right away. And the gentleman said, you need to call another number. And I said, I am not calling another number. Tell me what's going on. And just right now, it brings back the vividness of what Mary looked like facially and the girls. Abby wasn't with us, obviously. As I said, she was on a bus coming back from this semi-pro soccer game in Jacksonville, Florida. And I reluctantly repeated the 10 numbers. And the girls, or Mary, read them back to me after I probably rudely hung up on this first gentleman and called the second number. And it was vivid as this. He goes, Mike, I'm the coroner of Troup County, Georgia, and there was an accident last night and Philip is dead. To learn how you lost your son that way, and to watch my wife drop to her knees and my daughter Amy scream so loud. Our next door neighbor, the Fitzgeralds, Bob and Terry, were like family to us, aunt and uncle over the years. Terry came running over, and my daughter Ann was whiter than the whitest color you can imagine. And I realized at some point, like 10 minutes later, that Abby was on this bus. So I called Abby, and she would tell you if she was here. He woke me up. Didn't ask me the same questions he normally would ask me, like, did I score? Did I lead? How did my ankle that was just surgically repaired hold up? Did we win? He just asked the only other girl on that team that he knew, because these are all a bunch of kids that had come back and were doing some type of rehab. And I asked for Tess, and Tess was right across the aisle. And, many times I give this talk to high school kids. I said, I want you to imagine what's going through Abby's mind right now when I didn't ask her about what I normally would ask her, and why would I ask for Tess, and what's going through Tess's mind when I didn't ask Tess anything other than said, Tess, can you give your phone to the coach? And what I learned is Tess walked to the front of the bus, and I said to this coach, I said, sir, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but I need you to watch out for my baby girl because her brother's dead. That again, that triggered the emotions of where do we go from here? And that next morning, I didn't sleep the entire night. Family and friends descended on our house from Chicago, from Miami, from all over to help us through this. And that next morning, after not sleeping, I got up at 6 a.m., didn't tell anybody. I went to a place called Lita Thompson, this great place between Marietta and Roswell on Highway 92, and I went for a run. And vividly remember yelling out loud, as if God was right there looking at me, and Phillips with his big smile was there. And Philip, I remember him saying to me, it's going to be all right. And all I knew of details at that point was that he was dead. And I guess I made an assumption. He was 23, wasn't known to be a drunk, wasn't known to overdrink, at least certainly by his parents. But I assumed that weekend there was alcohol involved. These are all a bunch of young kids, right? And sure enough, the report came back that they rode horses during the day. They went mudding during the day. They were told to bring what you want to eat and drink because there was nothing open. And what I learned is Phil brought steaks for everybody because he made some money in the NFL. But then they drank to significant levels. And to realize that Abby rode on that bus for 5 hours after learning his brother passed away, man, you talk about heartbreaking. And then our friends, Bill and Lori, went and got her and brought her to the house. You got to do something with this, right? Right. And here I live in Cobb County, and we've delivered 33 of these high school safe driving summits, and not one to a Cobb County high school. As I shared, we've delivered at Marietta High School, but not to Cobb County. So we've got to be delivering these summits because I truly believe they're making a difference. We're losing too many lives here in our own community. We want to give back to our community. So this is the Lutzie 43 Foundation, and we created 43 Key Seconds.
And I do think Cobb County schools would benefit from what you are doing. I think that, we have young people who need this, who need it before they go to college. They need to learn because they're driving at, 15. My 13-year-old's looking very, very forward to driving. So it makes me happy and it frightens me, quite frankly.
All at the same time.
So, it's so important to give them different avenues of information and education, because that is how they can protect themselves. Because here's the reality, folks. As parents, we're not always going to be in the room with them. You're not going to be there to protect them through it all. So the more tools they have in their bag, the better decisions they can make when they leave you. Because ultimately, I feel traumatized just listening to what you said, because this is exactly why we do this work. We never, ever want a parent to be sitting where you are telling us that I wish something else had happened. Because it doesn't matter what pictures my kid would have seen, what information. I wish he would have had that in his head to make better choices. And he didn't, because what happens when with your friends, you have peer pressure. You want to be a part of the fun. You don't want to be the stick in the mud, the boring person not participating because you're a goody-goody religious kid. Even the good kids make poor choices sometimes.
I mean, that's my son. If you would have told me that we were going to get a phone call or have that posted out on our front door because of Phil losing his life, I would have said, you've got to be crazy. He's too smart to do that. And it's, my 3 daughters all reacted differently to this. 2 of them were older than Philip. Abby's the younger sister. Abby and Philip had a unique relationship, as he had with all his sisters, but the unique relationship because he's playing football at Auburn. She's playing soccer at Alabama, rival schools. Everybody wants to think it's the Iron Bowl of football. And again, obviously, they don't play each other, Abby and Philip, in the different sports, but it's still that Alabama-Auburn impact. But my oldest daughter, Amy, she was just so irate that anybody that wanted to put something poor comments on Philip on social media, she just wanted to go find him and choke him. And then my next daughter, Ann, she just said, Dad, he was so smart. She was so mad at Philip for putting himself in that situation. And then Abby, the youngest, quite frankly, she questioned God. Where was God to watch over Philip? So it's been interesting to watch all 3 girls react differently. My oldest daughter, I still don't think she's very thrilled that we have this foundation, even though she's rotated on our board twice, because I've always rotated the girls onto the board that supports the foundation. But she doesn't understand why we want this to still be public. And again, I think it's God's plan to say he had a platform, go do something with it. And I know the day I see my son again, that he's going to high five me and say, Dad, job well done. You had to do what you had to do. We had that wonderful relationship, just very honest with one another. And I've never shied away, whether I'm speaking to a high school, if I'm speaking to Georgia Tech football or Georgia football, which I've done over the years, NFL teams, whether I'm speaking to corporate employees, at their annual kickoff meeting and they've chose road safety to be a cause they're going to focus this year. I've never shied away with telling the mistakes that Philip made, but there's lessons to be learned from all of them. So these teenage audiences, I'm not sure we're doing a good enough job. And let me say this. I've never been an educator of any way. So I'm not criticizing where we've got drivers ed programs in schools where you've got to go get it on your own, third party, but we're just meeting each other. And if you were to get in my car to go to lunch and you didn't put your seatbelt on, that vehicle's not moving. And you'd pick up the fact that we're not moving, or maybe a look I give you, and you'd put your seatbelt on. But more importantly, you'd put it on because of where we're at in life, right? Teenagers don't always do that. So then the toughness for a teen driver to tell their friends to put their seatbelt on, that friend gives them a hard time. What we've created with the key, the 43 key, when that's hanging in your car, it gives that driver, that teenage driver, the strength to say, put your seatbelt on. Mm-hmm. This is my family's car. These are my rules. But it also triggers a behavior, right? We try to stress to the teenage students that, first of all, a driver's license is not a right. It's a privilege. Mm-hmm. boy, and that first time you get to go and drive as a young teenage driver with 3 teenage friends in the car, those 3 teenage friends that are passengers play just as important role of that vehicle getting from point A to point B. And I always clarify these kids when I talk to them, I'm not saying I don't want you to have fun, to smile, to laugh, to play music, but you've got to take the responsibility serious of driving a 4,200-pound vehicle. And you in that front passenger seat, you two in the back, if one of you is the known leader of the 4 and you're goofing around, that driver is most likely going to goof around. Have a great time, but be responsible to what is you as a passenger can play as a young teen.
Exactly. And you certainly cannot be so laid back where you're not actively engaged in paying attention. Distracted driving is just as bad as DUI. We have those conversations with our kids, but ultimately what you're offering is a little different than a driver's ed class because it brings something very personal to the fore. And I think that is important because when you're talking about these personal experiences, I mean, I'm moved and I do this stuff every day. And I can't imagine a young person not being impacted and having an imprint on them thinking, that's a father. That could have been my dad. That could be my parent talking about me. It's impactful. It's important. So I don't understand why Cub schools are not in on this. I think that's something I would like to see change. Even KSU, Kansas State University, is our local university, and they're of age, and they're probably doing that too.
Well, we did one of our summits, one of these 33 summits we've done at KSU, which is Cobb County. Yet, not making progress with the Cobb County schools. We had 50 kids from each of the 6 public high schools of Cherokee County bus over to KSU. And that was one of our summit locations. So we're going to keep knocking on the door. I think this message will get into Cobb County schools at some point. But I'm just proud of what we're doing. When you bring in 2 80,000-pound tractor trailers to one of these summits, and our foundation has a relationship with the American Trucking Association out of Washington, D.C., and we can make a phone call to say, hey, we're going to do a summit at this location, and they reach out to their clientele that have America's road team captains, that these are professional drivers that have 2.5 million miles of incident-free driving, and they come in and deliver a program like called Share the Road. Mm-hmm. These kids were right here where we're sitting. Within 5 minutes, you can be on I-75 South or North, right? One of the most north-south interstates in one of the fastest growing states in the country for truck traffic because of the great ports we have. And when I try to tell kids, how do you think something got to you from either UPS, Amazon, or FedEx to your front door? It may have started on a boat that came into the port, that got under a tractor trailer, that made it to the smaller vehicle to get our house. But these kids, when you're talking about driving around these 80,000-pound tractor trailers, they don't know what blind spots are. They don't know what the term governor or regulator or limiter are, which is some of these companies like FedEx will say, hey, we're setting our tractor trailers so they can't go over 67 miles an hour because they believe it's safer. Great drivers, but you and I are talking, every industry's got some bad apples that give a bad reputation, but we want to bring in 2 80,000-pound tractor trailers so kids can go in it, so kids can learn what are the blind spots, so they can understand what some of these terminologies are and be more respectful of driving around these large tractor trailers, because some of the latest stats are 78% of these crashes involving these large tractor trailers, we the light vehicle driver. Our age, teenagers are causing those. So that's how we educate them through these summits.
Right. And you are not just haven't seen, I mean, these are the crashes you really don't survive. You don't survive a commercial vehicle collision. You just don't if you're in a sedan. It doesn't even have to be that impactful. It doesn't even have to hit you hard. Chances are you're just not going to make it. And if you're on a motorcycle, those are the ones where we just don't see people survive. So I would say be careful with the 18-wheelers, the 18-wheeler trucks on the highway. And certainly if I had my way, I would really not advise anyone to drive a motorcycle because they are very dangerous. I have never seen, most of the VH2s I have seen are motorcycles.
Well, so. Unfortunately, again, we've got an increase in fatalities along our roadways with pedestrians, with bicyclists.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not people in vehicles anymore.
Right.
Right outside the Marietta Square here. I mean, the number of people walking, and if you're on your phone being distracted, certainly if you're impaired with a DUI or whatever it may be, we're putting those pedestrians at risk. So we try to address all of those elements in what we're doing with Philip's story and 43 Key Seconds. And in Georgia, right, we've got a great campaign that the DOT runs called Drive Alert, Arrive Alive, or Drive Alert. We just try to support that through 43 Key Seconds. And I think when you can tie a human life around something, it just has more depth and impact of somebody grasping what you're trying to educate them. And then we tie in what we're trying to do with 43 Key Seconds.
I wanted to ask you a little bit, and I'm doing a little bit of a pivot here in terms of, have you seen anything in terms of prosecution that concerns you, specifically with impaired drivers, DUI, alcohol, and drugs? Specifically, have you followed that?
I don't follow probably as close as I should. It was becoming this, quote, road safety advocate. You're always trying to, in the corporate world, I called it when I was at IBM, was continuing education credits. So we try to do things like that around how do you run a nonprofit? How do you be smarter in the areas of roadway challenges and fatalities, specifically to DUIs? I will tell you that the more rural I get in Georgia, that troopers will tell you to write a ticket. Sometimes they're discouraged by it, either DUI or distraction, because they're not sure where it might go.
What would you say if I told you that the sentence requirement for first DUI would be a $300 fine, some community service, an evaluation to see if you have a drug problem, and a class? What would you?
Life in most things in life, right? There's the belief, there's the carrot or the stick on how you get people to do things. To me, a $300 penalty to the average person is not a detriment. It's something they're going to figure out a way. They'll put it on a credit card. They'll borrow the money if they don't have it. I'm not sure that's going to deter anything from anybody. But again, if you were to take away their license, and they had to rely on somebody else to get them to work, or they had to ride on a ride share, if they couldn't afford that ticket in the first place, they're not going to afford ride share. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to get into the legislation.
I think you are. I think you are.
The legislation on why we do things. I think you have to have a stricter penalty to get the reaction you want from people.
Well, I do agree with you in terms of the fact that if you want to deter behavior, you have to have a penalty that people don't want to have to engage with the system. And a $300 fine is really not much of a penalty to start the DUI if we think DUIs are serious, right? So I would start with that. I would start with, if we think this is a public safety concern, the fine should reflect that.
Again, I'm not a lawmaker, but if you took away somebody's license for a period of time, I would think that would give them serious thoughts about, I can't put myself in this position again.
So a mandatory, basically requirement that they lose their license for a period of time.
I would think that would deter people or encourage people to make better decisions.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think that losing your ability to have the freedom to drive, which really is not a constitutional right, as Mike has been saying, he's quite accurate with the law. It is a privilege. You don't have a constitutional right to drive a vehicle on our roadways. You basically sign a contract saying you're going to follow the law. And obviously, defense attorneys could argue that differently, but that is the law. It is a privilege to drive. So on our highways, which means you have to abide by the rules. Sentencing, I think, should be one way of probably addressing those issues. And prosecutors have discretion, so a lot of them start not at 300, and that's actually something I changed here in Cobb County, because we used to see fines at the lowest of the low. And my position was, the first time a person gets arrested is not the first time they have done it.
Yeah, we talked about that, off air, right? It's the first time they got caught, most likely. So
exactly.
No, I'm certainly not the expert at how we're going to reduce DUIs and super speeding and not wearing seat belts. things of that nature. But again, we're trying to do our part with, Philip's story and his life and the creation of 43 Key Seconds to build momentum to get people to be more respectful of that responsibility driving on a vehicle and respect other people that are on the roadways.
Right. And as I've always said, I mean, we are very empathetic. We give people second chances, but the second chance does not mean you don't take accountability in a meaningful way. And the second chance should mean that you learn from that experience so that you don't do it again. Right.
Well, there's consequences to everything we do in life, right? So I think we just got to evaluate if there's a violation the first time for a DUI. Is there enough of a penalty there to deter them from doing it the next time? And from a financial standpoint, it looks like the answer is no, it's not. But I think if you go and take their privilege to have that vehicle, that would change some behaviors.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And, I'm not, I guess, have you ever heard of the ignition interlock, which is like a breathalyzer in the vehicle? What are your thoughts on something like that?
Again, not getting in depth of research on that. Vehicle manufacturers are for-profit organizations, and unless it was a government mandate that everybody that's selling a vehicle in the United States here, which not are all U.S. vehicles, some are foreign, I'm not sure you ever get that done in a for-profit environment. I go back again. We joked off air about all the Auburn flavor that seems to be around here. Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, they're putting, don't quote me on it, somewhere between 55 and 65% of the phones that go in a vehicle are Apple-based products. I'm not sure it's an advantage to Tim to say we're going to put a lock on that phone to protect other people if the competitors aren't doing the same thing. I think people might move to it. I don't know what the exact answer is. The simplest answer is we all just need to be more respectful of one another out there and make better choices, better decisions. And that's going to reduce the number of DUIs and speeding and wearing seatbelts. But again, we're human. I'm not sure that's going to happen.
Right. So I hear you say you have to make the choice to do better, which I agree with. And those are probably ideals that we all stand behind and support. But generally, there's a segment of the population that if they're going to get away with it, they're going to do it, right? If there's no consequence, real consequence. So I think that also is a balance that we have to consider when our legislators legislate, as well as when we prosecute cases.
Yeah, again, I think if there were stricter penalties that really hit home with somebody and you took away a real privilege that they have, we'd see some better results.
And one of the things I always say about DUI is kind of like battery cases. There's no one size fit all. There's no specific demographic that's doing this. It is sort of a carte blanche. Everyone, every demographic, every age group. We've had defendants from 80 to 17. It's just all across the board, So I don't think we're not going to look at it and say, oh, it just hits one demographic. Let's go educate them. It hits all demographics, all people equally.
Yep, that's certainly what I see.
So that is pretty much the trend. So I do think better sentencing guidelines would be helpful because it wouldn't be unfair to any one group. It would actually be fair to all groups. But do you think maybe that's why we have this trend toward, alcohol consumption is viewed culturally as very acceptable. Do you think perhaps changing some of those views would help?
I read an article recently this morning in Atlanta Journal-Constitution that they're saying more and more people are going to drink less over these holidays. There's trends right now that younger kids are drinking less. Are they making it up with something else that's not alcohol related?
That's the $1,000,000 question,
right? That is the case, though. But again, I think it comes back to human personal decision. If we just respect the fact that our choices could have negative impact or death consequence for others due to some choices, if we just make better decisions, I think that's the answer. But that's such a difficult thing to get across the board, for everybody to do that.
It is, but it's not impossible. I mean, as you've mentioned, partnerships, education, bringing Lutzie 43 to a wider audience of people, your potential next generation drinkers and drivers. I think those are all the ways that you do it. It's not just sentencing. It's not just podcasts like this.
That's right.
It's actually, it's doing the work, really. It's continued work. And sometimes you have to educate the parents because they have to understand that, hey, this could be your kid's life. Nobody wants to bury their child. I think that's the worst case scenario for any parent. You don't do all this work and invest all of this just to be having a conversation like this.
It's
right?
again, it's when you go to these, this past Friday, we're in Ashford, Alabama. We've got 600 students in an all-school assembly from 9 to 10:15. And in these two particular schools that came together, they elected their 9th and 10th graders to go through the 4 30-minute breakouts that we delivered. But at the end of the day, they all left with our lanyard that's got, in this particular case, Alabama DOT and Lutzie 43 on it, our 43 key seconds, the Drive Safe Alabama campaign over there, attached to the key. And that the goal is you tell them to put that in around your rearview mirror. In the vehicle, you now have that key to look at that triggers a different behavior. It's an image. But before you put it in your car, take this home tonight. If you felt this summit was of value, and this is a reason for you to have a conversation with mom and dad, because throughout the course of my opening keynote, I'll ask the question of the kids. Raise your hand if in the last week you didn't wear a seatbelt at any position in the vehicle. If you have a license already as a young child, and that was the 11th and 12th graders in this audience during the keynote, raise your hand if you're a distracted driver. And it's amazing that you get a lot of this from high school kids, and then they'll look around, and then they'll raise it high. But the important follow-up question is, raise your hand if when you're driving with your mother and father and they're behind the wheel, they're typically distracted. And it's like this right away. So what we try to coach the kids is, us adults make mistakes too. We need to be coached up. What a great way for you to have a conversation with mom and dad that you had this special group come in, talk about a young man who lost his life, the creation of 43 key seconds, all the experts we put in front, and just have a conversation that mom and dad, when the man asked a question about me raising my hand, if my mom and dad typically drove distracted, or my mom and dad typically didn't wear a seatbelt, or my mom and dad, when they're driving, occasionally might have an alcoholic beverage with them or drink after that. Mom and dad, I love you so much. You got to stop doing that. Mm-hmm. You can coach your parents up. And we think that, again, the 43 key second key and the checklist give them that tool to have the confidence to have that conversation.
You know, I like that because that's the very first time I've heard of an actionable sort of checklist that you can actually use as a young person so that you can ensure that you have done these things to be a safer driver. It's very practical, really. And, you know, I think every kid should have a little checklist before they get in the car, because it's beyond even alcohol consumption. Is your phone in a holder, or are you going to be fidgeting with your phone? Are you on the right station, or are you going to be changing the stations? Do all that before you get out of the driveway, you know?
Well, and again, what we will make sure every audience knows, I've talked a lot about these summits. I've talked about teenagers, but again, we see this gap in corporate America with the adults that, again, fleet-based organizations do a wonderful job of educating those that drive their logoed vehicle of the company. And I'll say this on record. It's not said much in corporate America, but if we have a crash of one of our employees driving XYZ on the side of that vehicle, we're more susceptible and responsible than if I have somebody that's driving their own vehicle on behalf of the company because the logo's not there.
Right.
So we think there's a wonderful opportunity for corporate America, the private sector, to say, continue to run that great safety program for those driving your corporate vehicles, but make sure everybody else in your organization benefits from that investment. And if you really want to get in your community and serve, start packaging it so all the employees can take it home to their driving age family members. And that's what 43 Key Seconds allows these organizations to do.
Okay. And it's a nonprofit organization, obviously.
That's correct.
And your seminars that you do at the schools, are they paid for? Or are they free to the school?
Well, that's a great question, right? 33 summits delivered. Schools have spent no money at all because we're blessed to have incredible relationships. Georgia Department of Transportation, Georgia Governor's Office of Highway Safety, Alabama Department of Transportation. We're hosting an event this Wednesday in Chattanooga because we're ready to go light up the state of Tennessee and what we're doing and the impact we're making. So the event up there is we're going to deliver a portion of what these summits look like, but the audience is private sector, public sector, associations, other organizations that want to be roadway safety stakeholders that can invest in what we're doing. An investment could be prayers. An investment could be financial. An investment is time and talent of subject matter experts that are these drivers, that are trauma personnel, that are first responders, that we bring the opportunity to give them an audience of teens to these summits. But we also want to go in and educate them to protect their employees and their assets.
Right. So there's really no reason why we should not be doing this here in our COV schools. If we can do it at no cost to the school district or the county, it's really a win-win from what you're telling me. It is.
And again, a public service announcement for a minute. We're so proud that we have awarded over $565,000 in scholarships. We do it through a program we call the PFL Scholarship, which is Prepared for Life. For our family, it means Philip Francis Lutzenkirchen. Cobb County High School juniors and seniors are eligible for it, whether it's a private school in Cobb County, a public school. KSU undergrad and graduate students are eligible for it. It's a $4,300 scholarship.
That's amazing.
Again, I think you're seeing the trend, right? Everything is around 43, but we're proud. We've gotten multiple high schools in Cobb County who've had kids submit applications. There's a lot of rigor towards it. Our board goes through the nomination process, but we've awarded scholarships to kids at other high schools besides Lassiter. But again, we've not delivered a summit to Cobb County high schools, and the opportunity is there to do so.
I would very much love to see that moving forward, and I think that's something we should both work on.
Well, I was going to say, maybe our energy can combine and we get that done.
And start making those calls and seeing what we can do, because I do think there's a value to educating young drivers today, because moving forward, these are the accidents that we would love to prevent. And I have to say, my heart can't take a fatality with a kid. Those things are just too painful. Even as prosecutors, we are traumatized when we see those things too. So even one life saved is worthwhile, I think.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And I think Philip would be so proud of you, you know.
I think he smiles down us each and every day, and we have to be patient. I would be lying if I said early on, I'm ready to go see my son, and it had been so unfair to my wife and daughters, and I'm going to be patient. I've told people I just turned 62 this year. All my friends, every conversation I get, they're all retiring. One of my daughters asked me recently if I was jealous of my friends were retiring, and I'm not, because I've got a passion to go do this. And the only way I won't do this through age 70 is if somebody tells me we're not making a difference. I know that's not going to happen. So, one of my headaches in life is going to come several years from now when I've got to identify who will take over this foundation, because the goal isn't to just stop and whatever we've put in the bank, go donate it somewhere or contribute it somewhere. It's to continue this beyond my time, to leverage Philip's legacy. And I think we're really on to something with these safe driving summits, the 43 key seconds. This is getting ready to expand in different states, but there's so much work we still have to do here in Marietta, in Cobb County, in the state of Georgia. That's where our passion resides.
Well, Cobb County is very progressive. Just, it takes a little bit of time for our leaders sometimes. And, I am very happy that Marietta schools have pretty much embraced you and that idea of education at the schools. And hopefully the rest of Cobb County will catch on. It's just a catch-up game, really. And I think, as with most things, you just have to persist. We all do.
Well, and one of the things, we get better every time we do this. In the last year, it kind of dawned on us, wow, schools like Marietta, Alpharetta, Lassiter, rural schools have incredible number of clubs that their students can join. One of those such clubs is an AV club. And it's typically led by a very passionate faculty member that guides the kids. But Marietta is a great example. We went in there to Dr. Crump and Dr. Revere and said, hey, would you have your AV club videotape the summit, the 5-hour summit? And if these kids come back and say this is worthless, then tell us. But we knew that wouldn't happen. But all the guidance I give the students is, we'd love you to create what I call a highlight video. They call it a sizzle reel, a sizzle video, and of what this summit is and how you might position it to sell it to the next high school leadership, to the next students, to bring it to their school. They were one of 8 schools that did that last year. We voted on the quality of the videos, and Marietta High School was awarded a $4,300, not scholarship, but award towards their AV club because they were voted number 1. And
that's amazing.
Now we've got the student's perspective of a very professionally created video that we can share with other schools, and it's so impactful. The other thing we did is, my concern is once we leave campus, we're kind of out of sight, out of mind, but it's the lanyard and the key that go around that rearview mirror. I'm not sure every student does that in their vehicle. I'm not sure they're all taking it home and talking to their parents. So the redundancy of the messaging, I think, of that age group is so important. Mm-hmm. We've now created, for lack of a better term, a 43 key second campus. So Alpharetta High School is an example. Stevens County, way up north in Georgia, is an example. There are first 2. If you go out their campus, they've got permanent signage in the student parking lots that every time those kids drive off and out the campus, they see their color, their logo, their mascot, but then it's the checklist of clear head, mm-hmm. clear hands, clear eyes, and then our key. Mm-hmm. And then the digital assets throughout the school, in classrooms, in the cafeteria, in a hallway. Some schools have created posters. The belief there is every student that walks by those is going to see it. Some, it'll just go right over their head. I get that. But many of them are going to resonate that and says, what did that key mean? Oh, I try to pass a tractor trailer around the left. I can't be in their blind spot. Oh, the doctor, the trauma surgeon told me the instruments that are going to go in my body in an attempt to save my life. And oh, by the way, I'm most likely as a teenager sitting on that emergency room table completely naked with strangers around me without my parents. Law enforcement agencies telling us what they're seeing of teenage drivers. Mm-hmm. What are the rehab exercises I'm going to go through, right? These are what these summits deliver.
I mean, there's so many things that they should be thinking about. Even, it's kind of weird because you might not even think that alcohol affects you like that, but you might be poisoned. Alcohol poisoning is real. I've had cases like that. Your body, your makeup might just not accept that kind of poison in it. For you, it might be poison. For me, it might be fun. So there's just so many things that once you start trying to be an adult, you should start acting and thinking like an adult because your health and safety are really at risk.
Well, you get these teenage audiences. I can't emphasize enough. First of all, when I turned 16, I was the kid that was in my parents' face growing up in Chicago that whole week leading to my birthday that we're going to the driver's license station, my birthday, right? I want to get that license. These kids are such an impactful time of their life they're coming up to, but the responsibility changes when you get the freedom of that vehicle without mom and dad or somebody else's parents. We just try to emphasize that and truly believe we're making a difference, but it's conversations like this. Again, I leave every discussion I have. If you learn one thing from my story or my family's story, Philip, is wear a seatbelt. Mm-hmm. Right. Philip was in the back seat. I can eliminate kids' thoughts right away when they say it's safer in the back seat. And I can say, no, my son is dead. He was in the back seat and didn't have a seatbelt on.
And in closing, I think this is a great place for us to segue. If I know the holidays are upon us, people will be consuming alcohol. We're going to have those Christmas parties. We're going to have the New Year's Eve parties. What's one thing that you would want to leave our viewers with when they're considering going to these parties and having a great time and also consuming alcohol?
Again, if I told you not to drink, I'd be a hypocrite. I will enjoy a glass of wine, a bourbon, perhaps a beer over the holidays, but do it in moderation. Do it with a plan that somebody's going to be getting behind the vehicle that's a designated driver. We don't need to be driving out there with alcohol or drugs or impairment to the levels that you're considered intoxicated. Be safe. Again, I shared off record. 6 weeks ago, year to date in Georgia, we were 17% fewer lost lives on our roadways compared to the same date last year. We're now coming upon two of the most impactful roadway fatality holidays in Christmas and New Year's. Our experts in the state will already tell you we're convinced we're probably going to end up only in single digits by year end in a reduction. A reduction is great, but we're still losing too many lives on our roadways due to poor decisions. Have a plan.
We're losing more lives with basically drug-impaired fatalities every year than we do with any current war. And that should tell you that literally our roads are a slaughterhouse. So be safe. The choice is yours to make. So make good choices. And while I could say don't drink and drive, that's not what I'm going to say. I'm going to say make a plan, be responsible, and remember, you might be the person who's impaired behind the wheel, but someone else may lose their life because of that decision. So thank you for your time. And I want to thank you so very much, Mike, for being here.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to working with you in the future.
Awesome. Thank you.
Again, thank you. Happy holidays and be safe. And thank you for joining our podcast with Smart Justice Works. And look forward to seeing you next time.